This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Offtrack Betting.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning. Welcome to the Sunday edition of Racing Across America. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Thanks also to our friends at Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program, some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park. Champions start here. Don't forget, Empire 6, the rules changed a couple of weeks ago. They will pay out the Empire 6 with a mandatory every 2 weeks, and today is one of those days. Unfortunately, it was hit a couple of days ago. So I just looked, $16,000 in there, and I am not an expert on the jackpot kind of formulas. You know, if you have six figures, you can kind of guess millions of dollars. With 16, I don't know. But I think with the mandatory, it'll be interesting to see. But people will jump in, I'm sure, and take their shot. 20-cent increment, so think about it. Handicapping segment a little bit later on. Maybe we'll kind of take a look at some of the races in the sequence and see if there are some ideas in there. But again, Empire 6 down at Aqueduct today does have a mandatory payout. And as I say, it will be interesting to see how it works out as far as how much money gets put into the pool. Today, we'll do some stakes recaps, a little bit of handicapping, and then next half hour, we will be joined by Eric Alwan from Sunland Park. They have a nice little stakes day out at Sunland today, highlighted by the Mind That Bird Derby. That's their prep race for their very rich Sunland Derby coming up a little bit later in the season, but some nice stakes action on the undercard as well. So we'll talk with Eric a little bit later on about that, but we'll kick things off talking some stakes action from yesterday. You know, I said yesterday, it was a little bit of a quiet day, no real races on the Derby Trail, and no major kind of events, but it was a fun day with some of the stakes that were run yesterday. And so let's take a look at some of that action. And we'll start out in New York with the Haynesfield, where the logical favorite was Mr. Buff. And yikes, he is a New York-bred monster for Chester and Barry Broman and John Kimmel. That's Mr. Buff out in front there. And really, I mean, he kind of gets eased up coming to the wire. Junior Alvarado is kind of taking it easy as they get close, but it's still a chart margin of 20 lengths. Running second was Honor Up, and Honor Up's no slouch. He won, look, he's barely riding there, 20 lengths. And Honor Up won the race last year, so Honor Up, no slouch, a winner of, about $400,000 himself. But Mr. Buff, that puts him over the $1 million mark. He is now a millionaire. Again, really a monster of a New York bred, particularly over the last 3 starts now. You go back to the Alex Robb, the end of December, a nice triple-digit win there. Then went into open company in the Jazzle, nice triple-digit buyer win there. And he did it again yesterday. I read Dave Grenig on Twitter last night. I think it was a 105 buyer for Mr. Buff yesterday in the Haynesfield. So just a really, really eye-popping performance. He absolutely likes Aqueduct as well. In the career, he now has 14 wins. 8 of those are at Aqueduct. 13 starts at Aqueduct, 8 wins, and 3 second-place finishes. So again, he clearly seems to enjoy the Aqueduct surface, although he has won elsewhere, including up at Saratoga. But Mr. Buff yesterday in the Haynesfield, as they say, yikes, that was some good-looking performance. All right, let's shift our attention now and take a look at some of the action down at Gulfstream, the World of Trouble Sprint. I like Lasting Legacy in here. That one's going to wind up a little bit of a disappointing fourth at 4-5, as other people like that one too. Pete Aiello said, a little too late for number 2, Lasting Legacy. The winner will be number 5, Jackson, 13-1. And I said, this would have been a tough call. I mean, this is a stakes quality performer, but in the last couple of seasons has had 3 wins. They were all over at Tampa. So class-wise, I wasn't sure how Jackson would stack up. He looked pretty good there down the stretch, though, getting it done 13-1. Running second was Admiral Lynch, and Epic Dreamer ran third. They were both kind of logical. I had Admiral Lynch in the second spot and Epic Dreamer in the third spot, right where they ended up. But unfortunately, the top pick, again, Lasting Legacy, made the late run. It was just too late from the back of the pack. And Jackson getting it done, again, $28 and change under Luis Saez. Coming out of a third-place finish in a Sunshine Millions sprint race back in the middle of January, and was 13-1 that day. And as I say, won a race 2 back, so was in decent form, but the 2-back race was a state-bred stakes race over at Tampa. So it seemed to show an affinity over the past couple of seasons for Tampa. Maybe not so much so at Gulfstream, but looked pretty good yesterday, getting it done in the World of Trouble Sprint. Also on the card yesterday, this one maybe has a little more implications as far as horses to watch going forward. The Any Limits was for 3-year-old fillies going 3/4 of a mile, and the favorite in here was the horse I think everybody wanted to see, and curious what the 3-year-old debut would be like. That was Frank's Rocket. Frank's Rocket is the number 5 horse for Bill Mott. This is a horse that broke the maiden in the career debut at Churchill. Then came up, ran second in the Adirondack at Saratoga, second in the Spinaway, both behind Perfect Alibi, and then second in the Frisette as well. So a couple of seconds in grade 1s to end the season last year. She looked pretty good in the 3-year-old debut. Frank's Rocket, the number 5 horse there. Chart margin was 7 lengths. John Velasquez on board. She went off at even money, so paid an even $4. Sound Machine ran second as the 6-5 second choice. That was the Safi Joseph runner coming out of a nice win last time in the Glitter Woman, and had certainly shown some talent. But Frank's Rocket, having that 2-year-old season that was so promising, again, went off as the favorite, and justifiably so. And now, be interesting to see. I mean, they tried the Frisette last year, the 1-turn mile at Belmont. Be interesting to see what the game plan is. They were talking in the winner's circle after the race with Bill Mott and owner Frank Fletcher, and Frank Fletcher said, probably stretch out and see if we can get a mile, and then we'll head out to a mile and a 16th, kind of indicating they may think there's some distance limitations. But when you have those distance limitations too, those are the kind of horses that maybe can look pretty good going a little bit longer at a track like Monmouth, or the 1-turn mile and an 1/8 at Belmont. So it wouldn't shock me to see them kind of experiment with this horse. You have a horse of this talent level, a 3-year-old filly, there'll be plenty of opportunities going forward. So we'll see what they do, but it wouldn't shock me to see them experiment a little bit. But as I say, a good-looking return to the races for Frank's Rocket and Bill Mott. All right, let's go over and take a look at Tampa Bay Downs. We're going to look at the entire Turf Dash. There were a couple of Turf Stakes yesterday, Turf Sprint Stakes. The first of those was the Turf Dash. And we're going to take a look at the entire race, because as they go down the backstretch, watch the 1. The 1, if you watch the head-on, we have the pan shot here, but if you watch the head-on, the 1's kind of getting out, and so the jock kind of pulls back, and that then spreads out the field. I like number 8, Extravagant Kid, who doesn't get necessarily directly affected. You can see the 8 Chiclet there. But as I say, when the 1 comes back, then the 3 will be behind the 1, and the 3 will also come back a little bit. And it just, at that point, the front 2 kind of separate themselves from the field. And you'll see the 1 right here. As I say, it's a little easier in the pan shot. He's getting out. Whoa, the jock tries to stop it. And as you can see there, now the rest of the field kind of has gone to the second tier, which includes my pick, Extravagant Kid, who disappointed a little bit running 5th, but he was just up against it. Extravagant Kid went off as the second choice at 2-1. Justaholic, the 10 horse, was the 2-1 favorite. But Faction Cat at 9-2 took advantage of the whole situation there and winds up winning. But they're no knock. I mean, this is legitimate. 20 and change, 42 and change, 53 and change. It was a new track record. So, as I say, Faction Cat took advantage of what happened in the race, certainly, and maybe it was the job was made a little bit easier because of that. Was that, as I say, that second tier, which then separated in a 5 furlong turf sprint. Now you're up against it a little bit. So he took advantage of the situation, but there is no taking anything away from the performance that Faction Cat put in with the 53 and change, as they say, 20 and change for the first quarter. Pretty nice performance to get a track record in there for Faction Cat. But again, if you were watching the race and you had like me, Extravagant Kid, or a couple of the other horses, keep that note in your mind for next time, because they were clearly affected by the situation with the horse that was kind of getting out, and then things separated, as I say, which made it a little bit difficult on those horses in that second tier. All right, let's go on to the Lightning City. This one, a little more predictable on the page, and as Rich Grunder said when they came under the wire, a win machine. I like Jean Elizabeth in here. She was 3-1 on the morning line. That did not hold up. She went off at 4-5. Jean Elizabeth is going to be the number 9 horse and will get challenged. It kind of looks like some horses are making late moves and she might get swallowed up, but no, she perseveres here very nicely. Jean Elizabeth over number 7, Miss Deplorable. Number 14, Our Happy Ending, runs 3rd. But Jean Elizabeth now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this was the 7th win in a streak she has going. And I'm just looking, they're all stakes races. Her last loss was in an optional claimer back in August at Presque Isle. Then she won a couple of stakes up at Woodbine on the synthetic, a stake on the main track at Hawthorne, Turfway on the synthetic, and off the turf or 2 back at Gulfstream Park, and on the turf last time at Gulfstream, and now comes over to Tampa and gets it done. So streak, this is pretty incredible. A streak of 7 races on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different racetracks and 3 different surfaces. Say 3 different surfaces saying synthetic, turf, and dirt, but the synthetic at Woodbine and the synthetic at Turfway, I would think you could count as different surfaces as well. So this is pretty incredible. Larry Ravelli trains. Jean Elizabeth, well over $500,000, had over $500,000 before the race yesterday, and with the 60, went over $600,000 in earnings. Nice little 5-year-old mare. Turf sprinting, I always say it's turf sprinting is a specialty. Turf sprinting at the stakes level is a specialty, and she is a special when it comes. She's very special when it comes to being a specialist. Stakes win number 7 in a row for Jean Elizabeth yesterday down at Tampa. And finally, let's move over to Santa Anita and the Buena Vista. These are fillies and mares, grade 2 on the turf at a mile. And the winner here is going to be number 11, Keeper of the Stars, in a nice little stretch run. Jolie Olympica, the 3-5 favorite, the number 1 horse, has the lead and had the lead virtually the entire way around, and looks like she'll be tough to run down. Keeper of the Stars then kind of wears her down. It looks like Mucho Unusual, the number 4, might go by him, both of them for a while, but then finally Keeper of the Stars grinds her down at 36-1. And I was watching the race and saw the post-race interview with trainer Jonathan Wong. It was his first, and I'm just going to look here. They said his first grade 2. I'm going to see if I can pull it up quickly here, maybe on Equibase. See if it was his first graded stakes race overall. Potentially he had a grade 1 in there. See if I can do this quickly. But obviously he was excited there, as were, you would assume, everyone who bet on Keeper of the Stars. A nice $74 mutual there. And let me just see if I can pull up view all graded stakes wins, and this will give us he had a couple of grade 3s prior, but one of them with Keeper of the Stars, but that was his first grade 2 victory. So congratulations to trainer Jonathan Wong with a little career milestone there yesterday. With a horse that probably better than 20-1 on the morning line. It was a field, Jolie Olympica was the 3-5 favorite, and this was a horse that had been undefeated in 3 starts in Brazil, then came here and won the La Cienega in the first start in the United States for Richard Mandel on Fox Hill. So absolutely logical, but that first start was at 5.5 on the turf, so a little bit of a question mark stretching out to the mile, although the horse had gone longer down in Brazil. So maybe a little bit of a question mark on the favorite. But Keeper of the Stars last year, 5 wins in 9 starts last year. And had tried Stakes Company and had been a grade 3 stakes winner back in October. So Keeper of the Stars had a little bit of something you could have hung your hat on if you were looking in that direction yesterday. But as I say, the first grade 2 win for trainer Jonathan Wong. And Abel Cedillo was the jockey. That's the kid who's been I don't think he is a kid. I said that when he first, and I think we talked to maybe John White out at Santa Anita half a year or so ago, as this guy was making a little noise out in Southern California. He'd come down from Northern California. Continues to ride well down there. All right, we will head to a break. When we come back, we will shift our attention to a little handicapping for this afternoon. As I say, the Empire is a mandatory pay today with $16,000 in the pool. And again, it'll be interesting to see. With the mandatory people play into it, clearly it won't be what you would hope with these mandatory pays, and you hope the carryover goes for days and days, and there's a couple $100,000 in there. But with somebody hitting it a couple of days ago, that's not the case. But it's still, with a mandatory pay, people will jump in, and it'll have a little more value than perhaps it normally would. So we'll take a look at some of those Empire 6 races right after the break, do a little handicapping, and then again a little bit later on, Eric Alwan from Sunland Park will join us and give us a little preview of some of their stakes action for this afternoon, including the Mind That Bird Derby. All of that coming up right after this. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Albany County, an incredible destination to live, work, and play, with easy connections to more than a dozen cities from our vibrant modern airport. It's a short trip downtown to a hive of culture and amusement, from world-class shows at the newly renovated Times Union Center to reliving the past at the New York State Museum. From outdoor recreation to shopping to nightlife, Albany County has something for everyone. We'll see you soon.
Wagering on horse racing just got a lot easier at Capital OTB with our newly designed state-of-the-art mobile wagering site. Everything you need is right here on one easy-to-navigate mobile platform. Set your favorite tracks, pick your horses, place your bets, all with a simple tap of the screen. Plus, you'll have access to Capital OTB TV for all our network programming. So log on to CapitalOTBBet.com and see just how easy wagering on horse racing can be.
Visit Rivers Casino and Resort, the Capital Region's only destination for live table game action and the hottest new slots paying out millions. And they're off. Horse betting is now at Rivers Casino and Resort with Capital Offtrack betting terminals and live tellers located just off the gaming floor at Van Slicks. Get in on all the action at Rivers Casino and Resort.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Sunday morning. Seth Merrow in the studio. Thanks for joining us. Should remind you, promo today here at the Clubhouse Racebook. There is a spin the wheel promo along with a win-a-bet contest. When you come in, you will get an entry slip. Fill that out, put your name in the hat, and during the afternoon there will be random drawings to spin the prize wheel. There are vouchers on there, swag and whatnot. It's always a lot of fun. That's this afternoon here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Spin the wheel promo and $100 win-a-bet contest. 7-Eleven, Central Avenue in Albany. Love to see you down here this afternoon. All right, the Empire, again, with a mandatory today, kicks off in race number 3 at Aqueduct. State-bred optional claimers. Puffery's even money on the morning line, and off the series of the last few races with improving numbers for Rudy Rodriguez. Looks kind of logical. I don't know if the horse is invincible, however. I mean, on best efforts, a Will Away and Sadie Lady can be up in the mix. I have it 5, 2, 3, and 1 in the third. You know, again, it's going to depend on how you want to structure your ticket. Puffery may be one you start out with a single, and then you know, if you don't get it done there, you can jump in the pick 5, which starts obviously in the next race. But Puffery, as I say, logically the one to beat. But coming off wins, again, with numbers that are in the ballpark of Puffery, both a Will Away and Sadie Lady are horses that are worth considering as well. Second leg of the Empire 6 is race number 4. Plain Vanilla Claimer going a mile. I have it 7, 2, 4, and 6. Orpheus. Another one that, you know, short price on the morning line, 9 to 5, I think will take some action. Has been racing against a little bit better in the past couple, but a little bit less in the 2 or 3 starts before that. So I think it's right in the comfort zone, kind of splitting what we've seen over the series of last races, and the horse has been right there, win 3 back, a couple of second place finishes since then. So Orpheus is kind of logical as the one to beat. And as I say, 9 to 5 on the morning line. Armament actually is the 8 to 5 morning line favorite, but hasn't been seen since November. Claimed that day and moved into the barn of Robitrasse and into the drawing away ownership group. And they've been doing very well with their horses, obviously. I'm just a little concerned about claimed, and you know, you have to assume they didn't claim in November. Excuse me. And kind of feel like, oh, let's claim in the middle of November and show up at the end of February. So I was just a little concerned about the time away as far as putting that one on top. But for Empire 6 purposes, both of those I would think have to be considered seriously. 3 to 13, maybe a little bit interesting. Beat 10,000 claimers last time, now moves up, obviously, but has some back numbers that stack up pretty well with this crew, and that last one was maybe a nice little confidence builder. Certainly the top 2 are I would say must-uses, but 3 to 13 is a possible minor upsetter. The 5th race today at Aqueduct, state-bred maiden claimers going a mile. I have the 5th race, 3, 6, 5, and 4. Now and again on top for me, moves into the barn of Linda Rice. Tried a mile and an eighth last time, showed some speed before fading. I think the cut back to the mile today is going to be a little bit beneficial. Dropping back to this maiden 25 state bred level will, I think, be a little bit of a help. This is one of those races where nobody is a standout. You're just looking for a little bit of something, and this horse has shown a little bit of life. So I use now and again on top with trepidation, 7-5 on the morning line. And if the horse takes more action, it takes more action, but I wouldn't look at that as giving me any more confidence. If I was putting an Empire 6 ticket together, I wouldn't want to really rely on one horse in a race like this. So Galway Empire goes out for West Point Thoroughbreds and Danny Gargan, adds blinkers, shows a first-time gelding symbol, and ran a decent third when dropped to this 25 level last time. I wouldn't be surprised to see that one in the thick of things. 518 from Todd Pletcher, 4-1 off a complete dud in the career debut. So the value I think reflects how weak this field is. But boy, a horse like that, you would certainly like to see a little more value potentially. But it's Pletcher, the horse you would assume will benefit from the career debut and perhaps move forward. And again, it's just a weak field. False Alarm at 15-1 is maybe, if you're searching for some value, that race 3 back with the 41 buyer kind of indicates that on a best effort, this horse not only belongs, might wind up to be the one to beat. But that race looks like an aberration as compared to the other 3 races, including the last 2, which weren't good at all. But if I was going to play around and look for a potential horse with some value, that Honorable Avenue, who I didn't include in my mix, also is intriguing. I just was not thrilled that either the jock or the trainer are not showing any wins at the meet. And when you're in this deep and they're still a little cool, it was hard to pull the trigger there. But I have a 3, 6, 5, and 4, and as I said, a race that I think you got to kind of spread around and play a little bit in a weak field. These are the kind, I say it a lot, somebody comes out of the barn that day, they're feeling their oats, they're feeling good, and they're the horse that gets it done. But it's hard to predict that because it's not on the page. What they're showing on the page is just kind of inconsistent. 6th race at Aqueduct this afternoon, optional claimer starter allowance, 3/4 of a mile. In the 6th, I have it 4, 2, 3, and 6. Victory Boulevard on top for Mike Maker. Comes out of a nice win in a 32,000 claimer, claimed out of that one. That was 7 furlongs, cuts back to the 6 today. I like the confident move up the claiming ladder to this 50,000 optional claimer starter allowance. Again, moving into the Mike Maker barn. He's decent off the claim. Eric Kensell on board, who's riding very well right now. Ryan's Cat in the 2nd spot. There's some, you talk about a world traveler. James Chapman, the trainer, has 2 in here, and I have him 2nd and 3rd. And they both kind of been bouncing around out of town, and it's just interesting that he not only comes to town with these 2, but comes to town and puts them in the same race. But Ryan's Cat, as you can see by the symbol on the page, he was Triple Crown nominated. Now, clearly hasn't lived up to that talent-wise, but look at the race 3 back at Mahoning Valley. 83 buyer and a nice win on the front end, and kind of ran away and hid from that field. And it was a field of 12, and wins it by double digits. Subsequently goes down and tries a stakes race down at the fairgrounds. Doesn't fare particularly well. Same with the Battaglia over at Turfway. But might be interesting in with this group this afternoon. So Ryan's Cat is interesting. And Chapman also brings in from out of town Drew, who has some early speed. Potentially could be a little bit interesting off those numbers fired at Mahoning Valley. But again, you look at those 2 numbers and you look at the number for Ryan's Cat at Mahoning Valley, you also have to wonder, are those numbers maybe a little inflated? Because they're a little bit out of line with some of the other numbers. We'll know more about both of these this afternoon, but I just thought it was interesting. The trainer came in with both of these kind of, not world travelers necessarily, but track travelers between them. I'm just kind of guesstimating probably about 8 or 9 different tracks they've been at throughout their abbreviated careers so far. So we have those in the mix. Dan the Man Can also seems to be in some pretty good form over the past couple of starts. And I think is going to be a good fit with this bunch today. So that's one I would also kind of, when I'm putting an Empire together, maybe take an extra look at. In the sixth for me, 4, 2, 3, and 6. Race number 7 at Aqueduct is the Sunday Stakes race. It's the Mattie May 3-year-old fillies, 3-year-old New York bred fillies, going a mile for $100,000. I have a 2, 1, 4, and 5 Ice Princess on top. I could make the case for the single here with Ice Princess, but I'd probably feel a little more confident using also the Service and Dub horse, Nicky Scissors. Again, I have a 2, 1, 4, and 5. The 2 and the 1, I think you'd get away with those, and maybe even Ice Princess. Princess won the career debut, state-bred maiden specials, and did it convincingly. Then they tried the Frizette. Ran fourth behind Wicked Whisper and Frank's Rocket, the Mott horse we saw winning the stakes race in her 3-year-old debut earlier down at Gulfstream. So in the Frizette, ran fourth against a salty bunch, moved back in against state-bred horses for the 3-year-old debut towards the end of January and won that very convincingly. So against state-breds, undefeated, and convincingly so. Number-wise, probably has an edge on this bunch. So again, I can make the case for Ice Princess perhaps being a single, but Nicky Scissors, Jason Service, Michael Dubb and company, coming off a big win in career start number 2. This is now career start number 3 and a stretch out from a couple of sprints. I wouldn't be shocked, to see a little bit of an improved effort for that one. Maya Wea is a Todd Pletcher runner that I think is also going to be very, very interesting. Was beaten by Ice Princess last time by the better part of 5 lengths. But, if you were looking in this race, you had enough of a budget, or maybe you pared down a little bit earlier, Ice Princess will take a lot of action in the Empire 6, and Nicky Scissors. So Maya Wea, if you toss that one in, I could certainly make a case for the Pletcher horse, and if that one does get it done, the Empire 6 will kick up the value potentially a little bit. But as I say, I would probably stick with the top 2 in here for me. In the 7th at Aqueduct, 2, 1, 4, and 5. The 8th and final at Aqueduct today will wrap up that Empire 6. State-bred maiden 40 claimers going 6. I have an 8, 2, 4, and 7. The number 8, Tapazirance, obviously has had plenty of opportunities, 8 starts and hasn't gotten it done, but fairly new to the Brad Cox barn, fairly new to the claiming ranks, and ran a good 3rd in a similar race last time after having shown some speed. I just think this horse is kind of primed for a good effort this afternoon. Cat's a lion by the tail. Linda Rice trainee showed a little bit of improvement, start 1 to start 2. Wouldn't be shocked if that continued today. Friday Beers is Pletcher and Rapoli, debut runner. Paid $105,000 for this horse right up here at Saratoga back in 2018. Now debuts in February of the 3-year-old season for a 40 tag. Had been down at Palm Beach Downs working out as recently as February 9th. Looked in the condition book, hey, let's go up and try some state-bred maiden 40s. Has a workout over at Belmont that got the horse acclimated to, the weather and whatnot up here. So Friday Beers, this is the kind of race where you can make a case for a fresh face, and it's Pletcher and Rapoli. The question mark is, paid $100,000 debuting for 40. So you can go either way there. And the firster from Linda Rice, Lake Rudolph. Again, this is a race you can make a case for a fresh face. And there are a few different ones that are a little bit attractive in here. The Mark Hennig runner, the number 3. James Ferraro has a Will Take Charge firster, the plain one. Normandy Invasion, the sire of Charlie Baker's number 11. So there are some firsters in there that offer you some opportunities. It's a tough way to end the sequence, and you probably are going to want to spread around and go a little bit deep in that 8th and final leg. But I have it 8, 2, 4, and 7. So there are some thoughts. Empire 6 today. Again, it is a mandatory pay, $16,000 in the pool. So, it's not going to balloon up to millions and millions, but I think it'll be fun, and there'll be enough in the pool because it is a mandatory to make it as I say, kind of fun, and it'll offer potentially a little bit of value. So keep it in mind. That kicks off in race number 3 today at Aqueduct, which has a post time of 2:20 in the p.m. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, Eric Alwan from Sunland Park. They have the Mind That Derby this afternoon, as well as some other stakes races on the undercard. We'll hit on all of those right after this. Stay tuned.
Where's the best place to find your favorite teams, your favorite food, daily drink specials, and wagering on live horse racing? Legends Field Sports Bar, 711 Central Avenue, Albany. Get your game on day or night with 75 flat-screen TVs, tournament-style pool tables, a private banquet room, and live horse racing. So if someone asks you, where's the best sports bar in the capital region? Tell them Legends Field Sports Bar, inside the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Come on!
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops. My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at capitalotb.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. As promised before the break, joined now by Eric Alwan from Sunland Park. Eric, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. Appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate your taking the time because I know it's a couple hours earlier out there, so I appreciate the early start. And I just want to note before we get into the racing for this afternoon, the previous times we've talked to you as the director of publicity out there at Sunland, but you've added a new hat, a new title. You're the announcer out there. How's the announcing gig going?
That's something that I always wanted to do. You know, Seth, I've been the voice of Albuquerque and Farmington in New Mexico, but to be the announcer at Sunland meant a great deal to me. I've been involved with New Mexico racing, you know, all my professional life, so it's kind of a nice little treat after 32 years to get to call the helm of the show, you know, Southwestern Racing, and get to call the Sunland Derby here in about a month.
Yeah, well, March 22nd, the big race comes up, and today's kind of previewing some of that action. We'll hit on that in a second. I want to ask one more nuts and bolts announcing question, because today, looking at the card, you start the card off quarter horse kinds of races, 330 yards, 400 yards, 400 yards, 300 yards. In the first 4 races. How do you have to adjust things for those kind of races? And is there a strategy for a race like that? Like, do you think, I'll get the first 2 out of the gate and then kind of hit the horses as they come closer to the wire? What's the game plan in those 300-yard races?
Well, you know, I've had the blessing of calling a couple of All-American futurities back about 20 years ago when I worked a couple meets at Ruidoso Downs, and you can't call everybody in the race. So you're looking for who breaks fast. You're looking at the ground and who breaks the cleanest. And then you just want to, be in the top 3, top 4. Occasionally, a horse will come running late, so you always got to be watching for that. But, I enjoy both breeds. They're both very exciting. And New Mexico's kind of quarter horse country, but here at Sunland, we have the best of both worlds. We've got the thoroughbreds too, and but I enjoy them both. But it's pretty frantic. Those photo finishes in quarter horse racing, dead tight. It happens all the time.
Yeah,
it's a different kind of stress.
It's I always say I respect you guys who announce because it's a tough job. But boy, those quarter horse races, blink and you miss it. And so I think there does have to be kind of a different mindset. But as you say, plenty of thoroughbred action as well. And let's jump in and take a look. Seventh race today starts out. What is, and I'm just looking here to make sure, it's an all-stakes pick 4 that'll include the Mind That Bird Derby. So keep that in mind for folks who want to jump in. All-stakes pick 4 kicks off with the Island Fashion, race number 7. And Eric, while we talk, I pulled up the Borderplex, a stakes race down at Sunland from January 26th because I wanted to show Dynasty of Her Own. She's the number 4 horse in here. Wins pretty easily for trainer Jonathan Wong. And we just watched a replay of Keeper of the Stars. Jonathan Wong yesterday at Santa Anita won his first Grade 2 event. So maybe a big weekend for him. But Dynasty of Her Own with the win over the track in the stakes race. And we see her on the outside here getting it done. Looks very interesting to me in the Island Fashion. What were your thoughts?
She was ultra impressive in that race, Seth, and we haven't seen too much of Jonathan Wong here at Sunland, but he's got some tremendous stats. Dynasty of Her Own had so much momentum on that turn, Seth, that, I mean, she went about 4 or 5 wide, was already blowing the field away. I think she's a main danger here. Maybe the only unknown quantity will be whether she can two-turn or not, but the way she closed and polished off that field, getting win over the track, all positives. I would think she would be the favorite. She's got the hottest jockey at the meet in Francisco Arrieta, who's taken our meet by storm. He's in a good battle for the top spot with Luis Contreras. The other horses in the race, Caribbean Sea is two-turn tested. So, I respect that. And Contreras is riding that one for Hall of Famer Steve Asmussen. So that one has to be respected. Our own top trainer has a couple of the races, Shanghai Keeley and Brave Cinderella. Not all that familiar with their work. They're coming from Golden Gate as well as Dynasty of Her Own did. I'm kind of partial to Dynasty of Her Own. She looks so smashing in that win.
Yeah, and I'll also mention Show Me the Magic, who in the replay we just watched ran third in there after having led much of the way. So also has a little experience over the Sunland surface. It looks like a fun race, as you mentioned, Steve Asmussen in there with a runner, and should be a fun way to kick off that all-stakes pick 4. And I should ask you to start, but give us a little update. What's the weather going to look like this afternoon?
Partly cloudy, but got some sun. We've had a relatively cold winter here for our little purposes. We're not used to much winter here in the Southwest. Track will be fast, in perfect condition. Could be some wind, maybe up to about 18 to 20 miles per hour, but otherwise a pretty darn good day for what ranks as probably our second biggest day of the meet.
That's what we like to hear. All right, let's move on to the Albert and Henry Dominguez Memorial Handicap, mile and a 16th for state breds. Nice field in here. And I pulled up the Jameson Handicap from January 26th because we have the first 3 finishers coming back. Number 7, Rig Time, number 6, Jet NG, and number 8, Shining Source. And I should also mention the favorite, Blazing Navarone, winds up running 7th, but that horse is back on Saturday as well. But we're watching Rig Time here out in front and getting it done by a chart margin of 4 lengths, looking pretty good. As I say, top 3 finishers coming back on Saturday. Your thought on the Dominguez?
Well, Blazing Navarone's been the kingpin of this division, Seth, and he kind of took it on the chin, and the Johnny Jameson, as Rig Time took it to him, kind of broke his heart before they even got to the stretch. So, bit of a chink in the armor of Blazing Navarone, a great New Mexico bred who's earned over $560,000. He has been very, very successful going 2 turns in the past. But I just don't see the pace getting any lighter. With Rig Time being in the race, he's definitely going to be pressing him once again. Rig Time's an unknown quantity going this far. So that pushes me in the direction of Jet G, or is patient and picks off runners left and right. I love how honest he's been. True, he hasn't been able to beat Rig Time or Blazing Navarone in those last few races, but maybe this stretch out of distance is exactly what he wants. I know that Shining Source loves the distance and the track, so he'll be coming too. So in this one particular case, I would rather go for horses that are a little off the pace, because I think there's going to be a hot pace once again.
Yeah, very nice. As I say, it looks like a fun race. The Dominguez race number 8. Let's move on to the highlight of the afternoon, the Mind That Bird Derby. Again, prep for the Sunland Derby coming up towards the end of March. The Rich prep for the Kentucky Derby out there at Sunland. But the Mind That Derby this afternoon. You lost Exalted. He ran yesterday out at Santa Anita and was a little bit of a disappointing third after the second in the career debut behind Nadal. But I pulled up another Santa Anita race to take a look at going back to January 25th. It's a starter optional claimer. And the winner will be number 1, Stack and Silver for Richard Baltus. And I thought off of this race, and just prior had broken the maiden. So in 3 starts so far, 2 nice wins after a little bit of a disappointing career debut, but and then figured it out and now has strung 2 races together, including this one. Stack and Silver obviously looks pretty good, but boy, you can make a case for, I think, all of them in here. Who do you like in the Mind That Bird?
Well, with the defection of Exalted, the highest buyer horse is Stack and Silver, so that makes him dangerous. Richard Baltus, powerhouse in Southern California. Got to respect him. But you know what? I think Sir Rick is coming into this race with just a burst of momentum. He's had 3 5-furlong breezes since he had that easy win at Houston and pretty much went wire to wire. He loves, a route of ground. Theodoro thinks he's improving. Gets our leading rider in Arrieta aboard, so although he's supposed to be, a slight favorite, he might still be 2-1 when all is said and done. He's by Painter. I think he's got a lot of fight in him. So that's the one that, I would recommend. Jungle Runner for Steve Asmussen is going to be adding blinkers. It's not a move that Steve makes all that often, but maybe he wants to get this horse involved in the pace early. Jungle Runner is Triple Crown nominated and did win the Clever Trevor, the tough Remington Park meet. So I think clearly these 3 kind of stand out. Sir Rick, Stack and Silver, and Jungle Runner.
And Sir Rick is kind of interesting. Moves out of the barn of Steve Asmussen into the barn of Robertino Diodoro, a move you don't see too often in a situation like that. Fun race, the highlight of the day. And then we wind things up, 10th race. Again, winding up an all-stakes pick 4. Keep that in mind. This is the, is it Red Hedeman? Am I pronouncing that right?
Red Hedeman. He was the daddy of Tough Hedeman, the rodeo Hall of Famer.
Oh, okay.
From years past.
So the Red Hedeman Mile wraps things up. Again, more state breds. Nice full field in here. This is kind of an evenly matched bunch. And as I looked last night, the 6, the 7, and the 8, Ancient Land, Evacuee, and On a Warpath, all kind of attracted my attention, with maybe the 6, Ancient Land, the one that I would tend to land on. But what are your thoughts in the 10th race?
Usually, Seth, the New Mexico breds have gotten really, really good in the last 20 years because the purses have just exploded. But they usually stay in sprint distances. But we do have occasionally these route stakes, like you saw in the Albert and Henry Dominguez earlier. But Ancient Land has already proven to me that he likes the route of ground. He won a race called the Steve Prather at Zia over and off track and flying from off the pace and won it in control fashion. It was a driving race. Really love his last race when he was able to kind of make a move in between runners and just exploded in the stretch to win the John Deere Four Rivers Stakes going 6 furlongs. But he's a horse that's very well suited to routing and gets along really well with Luis Contreras. There was a race at Zia back in November when he was flying and just missed by about a head against On a Warpath. I think that was the day that he really served notice that he was going to be one of the leaders in this category. Evacuee and On a Warpath will make him work, but I really think that Ancient Land's one of the more likely winners of the day. And earlier in the card, it's not a stake set, but watch out for Runaway Ghost. He's going to be a well-meant favorite in the 5th race. It's a nice allowance, and he won the Sunland Derby a couple years ago.
Runaway Ghost. I'm writing it down. Also notable, Ancient Land, one of those things on the PPs that folks may just overlook. They were nominated Triple Crown, which says something about the confidence level they had at some point.
Yeah, it does. Her breeding his breeding might not be all that well known to us. He's by the stud Monterey Jazz. The way that these New Mexico bred stakes are worth $100,000. Sunland Park has 32 races worth $100,000 or more. Really an amazing stat. So I don't think we'll see this horse on the Triple Crown landscape, but he's going to be making a lot of money anyway. Yeah, the last great New Mexico bred that I saw run in the Classic was when I was a little kid. A horse called Bold Ego.
Sure,
back in 1981. Yeah.
And I enjoy the racing out there in New Mexico. You know, you mentioned Albuquerque Downs. My brother used to live out there, and on a visit, I got a chance to stop at Albuquerque, which
Did you?
super scenic with the mountains in the background, and I enjoyed my day down there. But Albuquerque and Zia and Sunland, lots of good racing there. And again, coming up next month, the very rich Sunland Derby. So, Eric, we appreciate the visit and the thoughts on the stakes action today, and we'll probably check in again before the Sunland Derby.
Sounds great. Thanks for helping us out.
Appreciate it, and have a great day out there, you and everybody at
Take
Sunland.
care,
Eric Alwan from Sunland Park. Again, nice little stakes card today with the Mind That Bird Derby highlighting, but an all-stakes pick 4 kicking off in race number 7. So keep that in mind a little bit later on today out at Sunland. Talked a little bit about the NTRA top 10 polls yesterday with Bob Ehalt, as he is a voter, and the first poll came out yesterday, and I went through the top 5 on each poll, but I'll list the top 10 if you haven't seen both polls. And again, it's the first poll through, I think it's through the Triple Crown. There's also a 3-year-old poll. There's a general thoroughbred poll, and then, as I say, I think it ends with the Triple Crown, the 3-year-old poll. It ends somewhere in the middle of the year, and then they just concentrate on the general poll. But the first polls came out at the beginning of this week. On the 3-year-old side, no surprise, Tis the Law on top. 1,000 words, Nadal, authentic. And I'm just looking, Baffert, 1, 2, 3. How many does Baffert? So Baffert has, 3 of the top 5, 3 of the top 10 overall. But Tis the Law, 1,000 words, Nadal, authentic. Dennis's Moment, who they're going to be very interesting to see him in this upcoming weekend to make his 3-year-old debut. Mr. Monomoy, after the win down at the fairgrounds last week, kicks off the 3-year-old poll at number 6. Sol Volante, number 7. Independence Hall, number 8. Maxfield, number 9. And Silver Prospector, again with the win this past week. Silver Prospector down at Oaklawn winds up number 10. I talked with Bob Ehalt because we talked about his ballot in particular, and he had put Charlatan on. That's the Baffert horse who last weekend, we showed it yesterday. If you didn't see it, pull up the replay of Charlatan last Sunday in the career debut with, I think it was a 105 buyer. It was a triple-digit buyer. And Bob had Charlatan at number 10 on his ballot. But Charlatan, and made a couple other ballots, winds up 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, winds up technically 15th. They don't parse out down that far. But once you get past 10, they have other horses receiving votes, and they list them by vote total. So technically, Charlatan would have been at number 15. Enforceable just missed the top 10 off of the nice performance. Governor Morris also. Enforceable would have been 11. Governor Morris, number 12. Storm the Court got. I'm going to be interested to see what he does going forward. I was not a fan. As I say, on my Eclipse ballot, I went Structor as the 2-year-old because Storm the Court, and God bless him, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. You can't take that away from him, but it's going to be interesting to see what he does do this year. The overall poll going through that top 10, Mucho Gusto, Midnight Bijou, Maximum Security, McKinsey, Zulu Alpha, Kofefi in the number 6 position, Code of Honor number 7, Forensic Fire, Silver Dust, and Warriors Charge for our friend Marshall Graham, who again, when we were at the National Horse Players Championship in Vegas, we sat with him and he talked about some of his horses that have races upcoming, and he was looking forward to Warriors Charge in that Razorback down at Oaklawn, which he won the Holiday Monday card the other day. So again, there are your inaugural 2020 thoroughbred polls from the NTRA. Be fun to see how things change up as the year progresses. But it is looking like a fun year in the handicap division, potentially, so long as things kind of stay intact. And part of that is going to play out this coming weekend in the Saudi Cup. So that's going to be fun as well. All right. I am going to wrap things up for this edition of Racing Across America. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to our buddies at Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship. Gulfstream Park, champions start here. Appreciate their sponsorship. Also, a reminder that today at the Clubhouse Racebook, spin a wheel and a win-a-bet promotion. That happens today at the Clubhouse Racebook. Stop on by, put your name in the hat. You get a chance to potentially spin the wheel for a prize. There'll be vouchers and swag and whatnot on the prize wheel. All of that happening today at the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. And that's where we are. Folks don't know. I mention it every once in a while, but our little TV studio right in the back end of the Clubhouse Racebook. So we're here every day, and I typically go out on the front side a couple times a day myself and check things out. Yesterday, nice little Saturday crowd in here. Let's see if we can keep it going and juice it up here on a Sunday with the two promotions as well, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. All right, once again, going to wrap things up, and let me double check on the first race post time for Aqueduct as to when 1:20. So at the 1:20 post, yesterday we jumped in a little bit early to give some thoughts on Gulfstream and Tampa before the NYRA pregame show started. We may do the same today, so maybe 12:15 or so, we'll jump on early and give some thoughts on the openers at Gulfstream and Tampa. And then you'll watch the NYRA pregame show, and I'll come back on 12:45, 12:50, something like that, to kick off OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon, as we'll be taking a look at some of the action on this Sunday. So I'm going to step back for this morning, Racing Across America. As always, thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned. Plenty of great racing action coming up on the afternoon, and we will be back with OTB Live. We'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.